Extreme success is the result of working hard, dreaming big, learning from failure, loyalty, persistence, and resilience. Hello and welcome to another episode of Extreme One to Watch, where we bring inspirational stories about remarkable barrel racers to you every other Thursday. Today we are so excited. Our special guest is Terri Wood-Gates. Terri is no stranger to the winner's circle, both in and out of the arena. What a wonderful opportunity we have to learn about her journey. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We've had a lot of years together.
Yes, we have. I was thinking of that. We've known each other for a very long time, barrel raced together.
And then before that, it was the horse racing. And
Yes.
My earliest memory of Glenn and Norma is at the South Jordan racetrack and watching them. They illuminated. They were just at such a high level. And I remember looking at your mom and perfect hair. And strong hands, strong arms, and just a beautiful smile that would light up anywhere. And I mostly remember that they always outran us.
They did have some fun race horses.
Oh, they did.
Yes, we so fortunate to be able to win any race, but they had some good luck.
Let's dive into your youth and really how you were raised and what was your experience with horses.
Well, in fact, I just was telling my grandkids the other day that my first experience, or my first memory with a horse is when I was probably 2 or 3 years old. And we had 4 girls in the family, and we got this horse out. And I don't know who helped me get on the horse or whatever, but she was a big white horse with a great big back. And I would ride her during the day, and I didn't ever want to get off. So I would go under a tree and just lay back and take my naps on the horse. So, because if I got off, I had to share with my sisters. So that's my first memory of horses. And her name was Daisy, the big, white, gentle horse. And of course, we got into, my older sister, Vicky, got us into horse shows and barrel racing, and we all just followed suit. And I had a little horse. His name was Osage Johnny. He was an Appaloosa, and I ran him for years. And I loved doing the poles and barrels and all this, Western pleasure and everything on Johnny. And we had to put Johnny down. He was blind. He had cataracts, and we put him down. And my mom and dad said, "Do you want another Appaloosa?" Because I love them. And I said yes. And they got me this really super nice reining Western pleasure halter horse. And all I wanted to do was the reining event because it was fast. And I just wanted to go fast. And so that didn't work out for a nice pleasure horse. So they got me into barrel racing. And I was probably about 11 or 12 when I started just full-time barrel racing with my family. And it was just always a family sport that we did together and had the horses, and it kept the family together. And
it unifies. It really does unify a family. And you say you have 4 sisters. And so where are you in that line, and how does that work?
Well, I have, 4 girls, Vicky being the oldest, and then my sister Lori, who lives in Idaho, and my sister Shelly, who lives in West Jordan next to us, and then I am the youngest. Ooh. Which I always tell everybody, the youngest should get their way because we deserve that. We went through a lot.
Hence the territorializing on the horse.
Yes.
Claiming fame and won't get off. And it's like, well, it's little sister.
Right, and she's the littlest. Yeah, we can't make her cry.
Cannot make her cry
exactly.
Because then it's an incident.
Yes. So we had just us 4 girls, and actually Vicky is still very much involved in barrel racing. And my sister Lori has a lot of horses, but she was more into the breakaway roping and tie down, goat tying and stuff. And so she kind of does cattle stuff. They're on a dairy farm. And then my other sister Shelly doesn't have any involvement in horses. And then I'm just over the top. I just have way too many horses.
Well, let's talk about that. This could be a therapy session. So how many is too many?
Well, right now I think we have 12 horses, and then I just actually got 2 horses for my grandkids. So so I'm going to keep, hopefully keep those little grandkids riding.
Well, I can't believe you're a grandmother, by the way.
Me either.
It's just incredible. So Talk to us about that, about becoming a grandmother, and how many children you have, and how that all worked out.
Right. Okay. Well, I actually have one daughter of my own, and she has three little girls, and then her husband has an older little girl as well. So there's 4 girls there, and then I have my husband, Stuart, who we've been married 24 years or something. He has 3 children, and one lives in California, one in Salt Lake somewhere I don't even know where, and then a son that has 2 little girls that lives in Arizona. So
you have some good bonuses.
good, yes, we have some
those.
great, yes, bonus kids.
Yeah,
That's a
bonus
perfect,
kids.
yes,
You
yes.
really do. It's such a wonderful. I mean, Stuart, what a gem of a guy. So, how did you meet Stuart? And could you tell us a little bit about Stuart? Because you are a dynamic duo. I have to say, he really he's lucky, and so are you.
He is. I feel very fortunate, and to have Stuart. We met as my daughter Heather is the exact same age as his son Brian, and they are both 12. And we met when Heather and Brian were playing flag football. I was trying to get Heather involved in sports because she's never been overly involved in the horses. She did barrel race for a few years, but she just didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted her to. So we had her playing flag football, and Stuart, the coach, never showed up, so Stuart ended up being the coach, and so we kind of became, friends and stuff through that. And then actually Heather and Brian kind of had crushes on each other. So Stuart said, I'm going to coach junior jazz. Do you want to have Heather be on our team? So then, of course, that kept us in contact. And then we took the 2 kids out on a date, for pretend, took them to a movie, and actually Stuart and I went on the date. so with the kids and the 2 kids, and then we just kind of been together ever since.
So he's your biggest fan. What does Stuart bring to this relationship for you?
Oh my gosh, he's just huge support. He will do anything for not just me, but anybody, and that just means so much. I mean, we've been to barrel races where he's came out and helped me cinch up, or, because sometimes the horses are a little wild when you're getting off them to cinch them up. He'll hold them and stuff, and then he'll turn to anybody that's there and be like, does anybody need help, or can I help you with, hold your horse, clean your horse's feet? I mean, he it's so nice because he's the type of person that loves to help people and genuinely loves to help people. So it helps my mother, my mother, and we all live on the same property, and just would do anything for my mother, for any of my siblings and, sisters. And he's just amazing. He's amazing, and he works so hard.
So you, and speaking of your mother, and yes, I've watched Stuart. He is just he's a patron.
Yeah.
He's a true patron to the sport of barrel racing. He hasn't competed or done any of those things, and you brought him in, and he baptized by fire, probably, right?
By fire, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But when I look and I think of the Wood family, your mother and father were and are, they're legends. I mean, they truly are legendary in our industry, in the breeding in the breeding and all of it. So let's talk about those legendary parents of yours.
I'd love to. Yeah. Very, very. I get so emotional because they are just so amazing. And my mom still, she doesn't like to talk about her age, but because we're all in the senior class, 50 and older, we know she's older than 50, but she never liked to talk about her age because she thought she would say, I shouldn't be here running, because she ran up until, what was it, 7-8 years ago, and when she finished running, she went out on top. She won the RMPRA barrel racing for the year, and qualified for the circuit finals, and then just decided that maybe it was a little too risky because she'd had some back issues in her, so she's just amazing. And so, and then always had the support of my dad. And my dad just always, just the type of person that we didn't have a ton of stuff because my dad was a farmer, and, we never went without anything, but we wasn't over the top with a ton of money. But he always made sure we had the best truck and the best trailer, because if we were going to travel, he wanted us to be safe, and encouraged us to go places within our circuit and stuff. He was never one that wanted us to go a lot, but he, stayed close to family, because that's what this is all about, but encouraged us to go everywhere.
He's competitive.
So, oh my gosh, they both are so competitive.
That's the thing I know about it. It was like, anything other than first place is last place for him.
Show me a happy loser and I'll show you a loser.
Loser. That's another one of his
Yes,
sayings.
and I learned that Vince Lombardi, I believe they said, is who said that statement. And I'm like, that's where my dad learned that from, because he would say that. And that didn't mean he didn't accept losing, because you lose a lot. And in barrel racing, I think if you can't accept losing, you can't do it, because you're going to lose a lot. But you always want to be prepared and be competitive and feel like you have a chance to win. Now, it's not always going to work out, but you need to be.
He was very intentional.
Yeah.
Like when he walked in a room, he didn't demand the attention. It was just given. He was so respected. And I know you were extremely close with him. Mm-hmm. When did you lose him, and how was that to carry on?
He passed away 10 years ago last November, so 11 is when he passed away. So that's 10 years. And before that, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Maybe he had that for 5 years before. So it was very difficult to watch the guy who's been the big, just the man of the dad of the family, who's taken care of everybody and protected everybody, to watch him, decline in health. And so that was very difficult for all of us, because we were his caretakers. Me and my sister Lori came down a lot and helped, and my mom and I, we were there all the time with him. But then he passed away, and it was hard to go on, And even through those 5 years previous, I remember going to some rodeos, and I just didn't have my heart into it. I remember thinking a few times, gosh, if I can just, if they'll just hurry and get done with the calf rope, and we can be done and I can be home by 10, if it was a close rodeo or something. And I don't know if it was because I just wanted to make sure my dad was okay, because he'd stay with my nephew would come and watch him, or someone would watch him, because he couldn't travel with us towards the end. And so I think that a lot of times it was just like, I just wanted to get out of there so we could get home. And yet when he did pass away, I remember one time my mom was like, I don't feel like going. And I'm like, no, we went while he was alive, and we are going to continue to go now. And we're going to continue to breed some horses to the best of our ability, because we don't study it as well. And that's one thing we miss the very most from my dad, is his genius of knowing how to breed, what mare to breed to what stallion and stuff. And so we didn't breed as much, but I'm like, we have to kind of continue it, because we have these mares that he started in this family of mares, and we have to keep going.
Why do you think that he was so talented at the breeding part? Where did you see him study that game, and where did he come up with the formulas that he did to create such a great program?
He did study it. He had the racehorse magazines, and he always found like outcrosses. We wanted sane mind horses, but we also wanted the race horses, and we didn't mind a little bit of a hotter horse, because my dad was so talented and he helped us a lot to get them to listen to you and talk to you, or you talk to them and they listen to you, and he would always say, you only need these 2 fingers. That's all you need. You don't need to jerk on them. You don't need to pull on them. You don't need a big bit. You just need to communicate with the horse and communicate. An interesting story is when my dad was a young boy at 8 and 9 years old, he had people that he was so good with the horses. He had some people that had him jockey race horses, and they jockeyed thoroughbred horses. And my dad would say he was so little that they had to do is it a surcinge or something that they put around the horse? They put those around his legs to hold him on. And so because he was so little, and he said when they would run, he would win the race, and then going around the bend to pull him up, he said, I wasn't strong enough to stop them, so I would have to communicate with the horse, and so instead of like pull, he would communicate with the horse and talk to it, and just would win. And I guess he had a lot of people that were at the track that when they knew he was on the horse, they'd be like, Glenn, can this horse win? And he'd be, yeah, and they'd bet on him. And I guess there's a time some soldiers were there, and he said, yeah, this horse can win, and they ended up buying him some dinner or lunch or something, because they won off his betting. And you know what, he said, yeah, I think I can win. Of course, my dad thought he could win on anything he was on. That was part of the fun of my dad, because he was very competitive.
Well, his foundation explains a lot about him. It's like the circumstances of his life made him who he is. What are some of those key takeaways? What have you learned the most from having such great parents? Like, if there's one or two things that you could share of what the significance of their parenting, how it made you the champion that you are today.
Well, hard work. I watched them work very hard to get, save money, work hard, get what they have. My dad was a horse whisperer. He taught us so much of, not jerking on the horse and not, don't fight with the horse and give the horse every opportunity. Make barrel racing fun for the horse because it's got to be fun. And those are my barrel racing things. My mom was super good at starting colts, and so you could watch her and see how she did it. And she was the same way, you don't fight with the horse, you just give the horse the opportunity to work. My dad had a lot of little tricks about, like I said, he didn't believe in jerking. He would be like, you just need to use these two fingers. Now, of course, we use our hands, but what his point was, just really light hands, try to be light-handed, don't handle the horse around the barrel. Get it to the barrel and let it work the barrel. And that's kind of stuff I learned from them. Of course, the hard work of being a farmer, wheat farmer. He farmed 4,000 acres a year. It would alternate every other year, but that was what he farmed.
That's a big farm.
Yeah, so they hard work and honesty and, gets you a long way in life.
You left for a while. Did you leave barrel racing for a while and then come back, or did you always barrel race?
Well, I didn't compete in barrel racing. I barrel raced most of my life, and then I just went through a streak where, you just mentally kind of get wore out and stuff, and you grow up, you're trying to grow up and stuff like that. And I didn't barrel race competitively, but I actually stayed at my, close to my parents, and I'd go ride all the time. I actually started. It was funny because I started this one horse my mom ran in the futurities. His name was High on Blur, little black horse. That I taught him the poles. I taught him, I did everything. But then when it came down to the next year, and she says, "Do you want to run him?" I'm like, "No, I just don't want to. I don't." Sometimes, because we are such a competitive family, and it's funny because my mom's so competitive now. I mean, she competes at everything, and she's just, when she wins at it, she's good. Like we joke about, let's play some jacks, and my mom's like, I love to play jacks, and all of a sudden she's beating us all at jacks. I'm like, how do you do that? So I just said sometimes a person's mental state can't take that. And I was quite young. I was maybe in my 20s. And so I just quit for a couple of years, but I continued to ride and rode at my parents' house and stuff.
You always have been around a horse.
Yeah.
You never had a really long break or
no,
anything like that.
There's something about the, horse that just, you can get on them and ride them, and just, even if you don't barrel race or compete or whatever, you can just feel
They're therapeutic.
They're very therapeutic, yeah.
Helps you through a lot of rough spots.
Yes. Yeah.
They really do, to be able to go and throw a leg on. And does your mom still ride?
She doesn't still ride. She her shoulder got really, really bad, her right shoulder, and she wasn't able to lift the saddle on the horse. And then so I think it was maybe 2-3 years ago, maybe she quit riding, and she can't pull herself up on the horse, and she's too tough, and she's not going to have someone help her.
What was one of your proudest moments with your mom barrel racing? What can you think of? I mean, there were so many wins.
So many
yeah, wins.
And the fun times, you think of the fun times. There were a couple of times that we always rodeoed together, and we always ran back to back. And there are a few rodeos that we went, and we would both, like, I think there was one time we went up to Rapid City, South Dakota's rodeo, and we split winning the first one of the rounds there, and that was kind of fun because you're winning the round.
Mother and daughter split.
Yeah.
Wow,
one of
amazing.
my our favorite memories is actually one of the races in Salina where we ran at, I believe it was still the Extreme, when the dog. When the dog chased Kingpin, and it was just such a hilarious event for us because the dog chase. I think my mom had won the first go or placed in the first go on Kingpin. Came back in the second round and had a very nice run, but this dog
kept heeling her on every barrel. He'd wait for her.
Yeah, like instead of following her around the barrel, he'd sit at the other side of the barrel.
And then he'd go to the next one waiting for her, and then heel her all the way.
And
I'm screaming on the mic.
You were, and the dog, the horse
things.
still ran a 15.9, I believe.
Still.
So she comes back, and you offered her a rerun. And my dad says, my mom said, I'm not going to take a rerun. And she felt so bad because she just felt bad for the people that owned the dog because we knew it was tied up. We knew the dog, and she was like, I'm not going to do that. And my dad goes, you are running again. And she goes, I'm not going to do that. They had a teeny little bit of an argument out back, you know. And so then my dad went and sat down, and so you said, Norma, we just need to know. And she's walking up to tell you, no, I'm not going to run. And I looked at her, and I'm like, you better run because Glenn wants you to. And he's sitting right next to me, you know. So she goes and tells you she's going to run. She comes out and runs a 15.4.
It was crazy. Won the whole show.
She won the deal. Vicky ended up winning a saddle in one of the Ds. I didn't win
she
something.
She put you all in it.
Yeah, my daughter Heather won the 3D that day. She was so mad at her horse because it ran a 16.4. Why is she so slow until Grandma ran a 15.4 and she won $500 or something? So it was just that was one fun memory. And just
turning it around.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I often will say is it's never over until it's over.
Yeah.
And she has won a lot of events, being the very last one, but that one was, I'll never forget it. It was so much, it was crazy bad luck flipped around.
Yeah.
Everyone in the stands was screaming and cheering.
Yeah.
And it was just the adrenaline was so high. There's been so many of those great races. I often would say, you know, when we call this Extreme One to Watch, of course, and that's because of all of these wonderful runners like yourself. No matter what, I'll say, okay, it's Terri Woodgates. It was Terri Wood for a long time, and now it's Terri Woodgates is in the next run, you know, and people just come to the arena.
and for good and bad reasons.
Oh yeah, no, they're running
I mean, you know,
to the fence.
see,
they want to see.
You don't know you just don't know what's going to happen in a barrel race.
No, you don't. Yeah. And I remember saying it's funny that you would say this about the, you know, part of losing is getting past that. I used to have a statement that would say, I'd like all the money that Terri's lost.
Hitting barrels. Yes, and I've lost a lot.
Oh, but you stay so tight, and you will, and no matter what, I'm thinking, oh, she'll be more conservative this time, but you don't.
No.
You do. How do you wipe those hard losses away and just come back the next day?
You know, it's some of them are harder than others, of course, because it depends on what happened, but. There are some times that it's just circumstances are you bring a barrel out when, you know, turning a barrel, coming out of the barrel, you're going to pull the barrel over with you, and that's just bad luck. It just wasn't your day, and some days you hit it so hard, you know, but you have to just remember there's always another barrel race, and you just set your mind up, and we have a theory. Like there was one season that I was running this horse named Jet and Jordan, and he was like one of my very favorite horses to run, but I did hit a lot of barrels on him. And my mom and dad and I had went up to some rodeos up in Idaho, and I had hit a couple barrels. And so finally my dad looks at me and says, we're getting ready to run at Gooding, Idaho that night. My dad goes, now what are you doing? Do you know where you're going? And I'm like, yeah, of course I know where I'm going. You know, I've barrel raced my whole life. And he goes, okay, well then what I would like you to do is, here's a piece of paper. He draws 3 barrels, like in a barrel pattern. And he goes, now I want you to take and just make a pattern of where you're going to go. Draw it with a pencil and a piece of paper and make a pattern of where you're going to go. So I did. And he's like, now you see that pattern, you study that, and then you go out and make that pattern on that horse. And you're not hitting a barrel. You're getting close enough to turn it tight and clock, but you're not hitting a barrel. Now you go make that run. And he goes, I want you to think about that when you go in the arena. So our theory is when we run barrels, we never look at the barrel. We never let other outside distractions try to get us, but we try to watch our ground and go in exactly where we want to go. And that's what my dad always says, as long as you know where you're going, you're going to be fine. You know, you're mentally ready for it. So I went into Gooding, Idaho, and I thought to myself, I was kind of a little upset because I'm like, that's kind of rude, but yet it's very smart. And I thought about that. I watched my pattern, and I think I ended up placing 2nd or 3rd in that rodeo, you know. Yeah. So we go to Burley the next night, and he goes, now do you need to draw that pattern again, or are you good? And I'm like, oh, I got it right here. I'm going to follow that pattern. And I don't remember how I placed, but I think I placed at Burley as well. And that's how you get over it.
Father knows best.
Father knows best, and you just know you got to keep going. And
I like what you said with that you look at the ground. You know, you don't focus on, you never look at the barrel, but you know where you're going to be placed on that ground. That ground's your key. Your horses. You've had so many great runs. Maybe you could give us some highlights of some of your big wins and what they meant to you.
oh wow, yeah. I've been lucky to have a couple.
Couple pages, couple volumes.
A couple. Some that come to mind is one is I was running Britland, GW Britland at Vegas. I believe it was like a Charmaine James Invitational or something, and there were a lot of really good runners. And she happened to go in. She ran really nice. Actually even came home and almost turned before the timer light, just barely got her past the timer light because our horses aren't used to running to closed gates, you know.
Yeah.
And she ended up winning $30,000 in a saddle and stuff. And there were really good horses. I think there was bad, you know, some people had bad luck, and that's part of barrel racing, hit a barrel and just outran a few. And so that's one highlight that you always remember. I've lucked out and won we call it the Dodge Circuit Finals, but it's the Ram Circuit Finals now. It was when it was in Idaho, and I won on Main Dash to Fame, who was one of my very ultimate favorite horse to run. You know,
What was its breeding?
He was a Dash to Fame out of a Circassanova mare, and in fact, his full sister is Smooth Moving Lena, who we bought about 3 years ago, and we run her and loved her from the minute we saw her.
So you bred that horse and raced it? Did it race or anything?
No,
or
I
did you
didn't.
buy-
We bought him. We bought both of them from Spencer Peterson. He had the mare, or he bred the mare to Dash to Fame and got that horse. And then we just loved him so much. And then Haley Woodward was running Lena, and we'd watched her from the time she was a 4-year-old. I called my mom and I said, I just found Spence's full sister that actually looks like Spence, because there's always full siblings and half siblings that don't quite match, you know. And we watched her for a few years, and there were just some circumstances that we ended up being able to buy her. And I think it was 3 years ago that we ended up buying her. So I've run her.
So you won with him at the Dodge, which is a huge accomplishment. That's really big. You've been to how many Wilderness Circuit Finals, and you've won so many.
You know, they asked me last year how many I'd been to, and I don't know how to tell. I know I've missed a few here and there, but maybe 20, in between 20 and 25, I've qualified for the Circuit Finals, and a lot of different horses. And I've won the Circuit Finals average, which is always just such a thing because the top 12 is always so tough. But I've won the average on several different horses like Kizzy Pie and KJS Fame and Main Dash of Fame, and High on Blur won the average, and Lena's won the average, and just been so lucky to, I think, I don't know if I ran Carly a couple years. I don't think she won the average, but she ran good for me. And then I've been lucky to win the circuit 2 or 3 times for the year end. So
you're so
it is lucky. It is. It takes a lot of luck to get the good runs at the right time.
Well, and the thing is you've got this beautiful list of champion horses that you have developed into champions, and so few people get more than just 1 or 2, because it's really hard to repeat. After you get those really great horses to come bring it back, like the Bozos and the Christy Peterson horses, and then to see Christy's daughter now,
wasn't that fun?
Doing really well. Amazing. So it is that family lineage of just being able to figure it out, but you go through a lot of horses, right? Before you find you have to turn back several before you don't just luck into them all the time, right?
Right. You start two or three a year, and then hopefully one of them work out, and they don't always work out, or they don't always make futurity horses, and then you keep them and hope that or we've been lucky to sell a few to people that fit them really well, and the horse goes on to be successful, because that's what we really want. And so you go through a lot of horses, and then you try to just pick out ones that, because we like to rodeo. I mean, that's kind of my thing. I love the big 4Ds, and I love to rodeo. Those are the 2 things I kind of enjoy.
Did you ever want to take a run at the NFR?
You know, I want to run at the NFR.
If they just give you just free, like, look, I've got this great resume.
Yeah, if I didn't have to
here's
do it
my
all
resume.
in 1 year,
Yeah, we don't need to run. We're just going to do 1 year with resume.
Because kudos to those gals that can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I don't know if I could do it. I mean, honestly. And my dad never really encouraged it because he was always like, this is family. If you want a family, we're going to stay here. He loved going to as many circuit rodeos as we wanted to, but kind of try to be gone for the weekend and be home.
Yeah.
The make it, you know, the NFR is so much luck. And like there's people down in Texas right now just starting out, and you know, it's just so difficult. So the answer is yes, I would love to run at the NFR. I would even like to say I'd take a couple years and make a, like, go for it, but then I'm like, oh, I don't know, can I be away from my grandkids that long, or could I be away from my mom that long, because she doesn't like to travel so much anymore, and so I don't know that
the trade-off's worth it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'll ever do that, but I admire, and I think it's amazing, those gals that go down the road and do that, you know.
Well, and I mean, you've certainly had the horses to do it. I'm sure it was tempting to a degree.
Yes.
And Vicki went.
And Vicki went. She went, and she went
to the NFR.
Yeah, and
really Vicki Salmonson,
Vicki
by the way.
Salmonson, yeah, she's my oldest sister, and she's done. Yeah, it was amazing. She had an amazing horse, and he was super fast and super good, and handled any condition. And I think she had to go 1 year to kind of get so you can go to the winter rodeos, and then the next year she made it to the NFR, and then her horse got hurt. So there's always that risk too, you know, because every run is a risk. And
it is, so. And rodeo ground is not for the faint of heart.
No,
I mean, it's not. It's very inconsistent. It's outdoors most of the time. It's not the priority of the organization, the committees or whatever, because it's just one of many events,
right,
instead of it being a.
And most rodeo grounds, unfortunately, only have events at that particular rodeo. You know, we went down to Vegas, and they didn't have a rodeo because of COVID the previous year, and then they're like, oh, well, we got working on it on Tuesday, and then they did slack on Wednesday and had the rodeo, and it's like, that's just super hard. Although I have to thank all the rodeo committees for starting to rake every 6 runners or halfway through every so many runners, because that makes a huge difference. But you do find a horse that loves trashy rodeo ground, and then you gotta just go for it.
Then you're like, okay, got the trash horse, got that. We got to run him, and then hopefully you can keep them sound. To your point, it's you. So when you've had great horses that then become sore and whatnot, walk us through some of your tricks of the trade of what you've had learned over the years.
Well, I think it's we didn't used to do a lot of injecting in the hocks and stuff. We give but like little joints, but I think it does make a lot of difference to the horse and how it can compete. So we do, we try to keep them maintenance that way. We also do a lot of feed them vitamins and try to have their feeding program as good as possible. A good vitamin. We try to feed them stuff for ulcers, and I think horses have a lot of ulcers, and we also do a lot of the Legend every month. It's kind of expensive, but on
preventative.
Preventative, yeah. You give them like a Legend or Adequan shot, and then just luck, you try not to breathe the legs out from under them, because sometimes they get, we've been lucky to have pretty strong, good legs.
So conformation is important to you.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a horse and you may or pass on one, what are you looking for in conformation?
Just like that, strong bones, straight as legs as possible. We've bought a couple of horses just recently that actually from out of state, so we just kind of hope that they turn out pretty good. We look into a lot of bloodlines, how they're bred, but we just want them to look strong, no huge injuries from whether we buy a racehorse or something.
How old of a horse do you normally buy? Is there a certain age that you like, or it's just when you find it? When we find it.
Yeah. If I'm talking to somebody, we try to breed as many, get our own bloodlines and stuff, that's a risk as well, because you don't know what you're going to get. But we just happen to look or see something or see a bloodline we like, and that's how we've bought the last few horses. You know, we've just we wanted to try this horse, or we've always been huge fans of Dash to Fame because we've had so much luck with them. So we found a little filly last year that wasn't even broke or anything. She was 2, but she was bred so well that we're like, oh, we're just going to have to take that chance because, you know, what she is when we get her, because no matter what, we have a great mare to breed or something.
Right.
But yeah.
So out of those, Dash to Fame is one of your favorite studs. Do you have any others that you like or that you're impressed with, that up and comers? Or?
Yeah, well, of course, the Goodbye Lane. He's just showed so much, and you have some. I have 4 of them. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about those, their accomplishments. How has that been for you?
Well, I have she's 7 this year, a 7-year-old, and she hasn't done a ton. She's won a few things here and there, but her name's Sophia Kay, and she's a super nice little mare. We took her really slow, and then last year when we were just about getting ready to start running her, she had a chip in her knee. I had our vet, Bo Beck, come down and go over her, and he found a chip in her knee. So instead of running her at all these fun things in the spring, we opted just to take the chip out. So she didn't come back and start running until last fall. So she'll be the horse I kind of go with this year a little bit more with my rodeos with my other horse. And then we have 2 others that are 6 this year, and one's name's Consuelos, and he ran really good in Arizona for me, and then he came home and he played in a pen and hurt himself about a year ago. And so we kind of spent the summer on and off. He's been super inconsistent because we were trying to get him better. I mean, like, he was dragging a right back leg, so we didn't know if he was done. You know, must have just pinched something. So we're hoping he comes back this year. And then I had Alice Olivia, who was a futurity horse last year, who was kind of my dream horse because she was easy to run. She seemed pretty fast and easy to warm up, easy to handle. Just one of those horses that I'm like, this is it. It's Carly Q's half sister, so we love Carly Q, you know. And so I'm like, this is it. This is the horse. And I was so excited, and I made the mistake of making plans for her future, and I ran her at the Ruby Buckle in Salina, her first go of the futurity, and I think she ended up placing 3rd or 4th in that futurity, ran out of the arena, and when I stopped her, I felt her limping in the left back leg, and she hasn't stopped limping yet. So she's injured herself. I think she had a couple injuries, but a main injury is her hock. Something's gone wrong with that, and so she's turned into a broodmare, so that kind of takes your breath away. And
do you like mares better than geldings?
You know, personally, I do, just because I get along with them. I think they try. Sometimes they try a little too hard, but they've been hard.
I remember it seems like you've run a lot of mares.
Yeah, we run, and mostly we run what because we bred so much in the past that it wasn't like we got a choice. It wasn't like, we'd breed them and then we'd race them on the racetrack and then we'd start them on the barrels. So we didn't have a lot of times the opportunity to pick this horse or this straight-legged horse or this, mare or gelding. So we just took what we had. But we've had such good luck with mares, and we find that they don't buddy up with their friends quite as much. They're a little more independent to me, and they don't need a friend quite as much as a gelding. Geldings get kind of needing a friend. And so where I rodeo by myself, I need something that will just stay at the trailer by itself while I take my horse and run. So
have you ever run a stud?
My mom did once years ago, but we don't want to keep a stud. We don't want to handle them, especially me and Norma. We didn't want to handle a stud, so we just don't much.
Do you have any studs on your property?
I have one yearling that just turned a year this year, but I just bought him last November.
So you're gonna keep him a stud, or you're gonna no?
We're just
no.
we're not.
He's a temporary stud.
Yeah. So he's the only stud we have on the property, and right now I'm just like, I'd like to put him out with these little mares, but I don't think he could do any, breed him, but I think he could try, and I don't want him to hurt himself. So we'll look into getting him gelded and then do stuff with him. But super cute. And he's bred nice enough to be a stud, but I just don't want to handle them.
Yeah.
What's
still in the future for Terri Wood-Gates?
That's just a lot of barrel racing. I'm going to try to just go. I don't know. I just have places I want to go, and every year you just want to do the best that you can do. Like you asked, would I love to go to the NFR? I'd love to try. I'd love to even make a run for it. I just don't know if I ever will set my mind to that early in the year. But I want to go. I like to just try to make the circuit finals, if you luck into winning the circuit, because it takes a lot of luck to win the big rodeos with the big money. And
Who is some of your people that you look up to and admire?
well, besides my mom, who is the one person I've always admired, there's a lot of people. I look at Jordan Briggs. I sure admired how she just handles herself and how nice her horses are. I admire you and Destiny for putting on such big races and giving us barrel racers the opportunity to run at big fun money. Most of the producers, I really admire them because I just think it's got to be the hardest job in the world.
What makes it rewarding is to watch race the contestants like yourself that are not only there to compete at their highest level, but they really do elevate the way the sport is. And I just have to commend you for your attitude and your spirit in the arena and outside the arena, because that's not always the case. You're always really easy to work with, and it's been so much fun over the years to be able to watch you. And there's been so many highs, and then there's been the agonies of defeat, and that you've overcome them. And how do you alleviate stress in your life, like when those big defeats come?
Oh man, that is a good question. Most of the time when I hit a barrel, I'm just mending the wound on my leg. So
Thinking of the pain.
Think of the pain. I remember, I believe it was actually, and I don't know how, it is stressful. And you can make it super stressful. We've kind of made a rule at my house, and I think I learned this from Edri a day, is you give yourself 10 to 15 minutes to sulk, and then you have to get over it, because there's always another barrel race. And I believe it was Edria that was telling me that, and I'm like, I'm gonna live by that, because that's what we do. We give ourselves 15 minutes, and we can be mad. I know there's been times. There was one year I was hitting a lot of barrels on that. I was running that high on blur on the rodeos, and I was hitting a lot of barrels. Couldn't blame him because he was hitting them coming out of them. Kept hitting a barrel. I went back to the trailer. I took my hat and I just went inside my trailer, the tack room, left my horse tied up, and just beat the holy living tar out of that hat. And that hat was flat, and I felt so much better. And my mom's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I can't blame the horse. I can't just throw a fit out here. So I just kind of beat my hat up in the trailer, and boy, I felt so much better. And my hat looked horrible, and I don't even know if I was able to use it anymore. So sometimes you just have to let it out and just, but I try not to do it to make a scene. And I didn't want to beat the horse up because it really wasn't his fault. So so you just try to.
Do you discipline horses?
I do. I think you have to, because if they don't respect you.
What type of discipline would you consider useful for the listeners?
I like leading a horse. I don't want a horse to jump around. I know that I was kicked in the head by a horse. It was actually 3 years ago, just about right now. And my big mistake was, we have a little hill at our house, and I went to go out open a door, and it was cold, and the horse, I let the horse have a little slack instead of so she didn't slip and fall. So I allowed her to play, and when she played, she jumped and kicked, and apparently all I remember is just a big boom on my head, and then everything went black. And so leading a horse, I have such PTSD that totally that's where mostly discipline a horse when I'm leading it or handling a horse, because I don't want it to hurt me, because I know it can hurt you. It's not a matter of if, it's when you get hurt with
and
horses.
Was that your worst injury?
Yes.
By far?
Yeah, by far. I've had broodmares kick me in the back and broke some ribs, but that was kind of my fault, because I was out playing with some colts, and the mare tried to chase another mare, and she accidentally got me and kicked me. That was maybe 25 years ago, but this was my biggest struggle, like to get back to barrel racing at a competitive level. And
so when that happened, you were outside. Who found you, and what happened with that?
It was a horrible, and it's weird because my memory from that day most of the time is a little sketchy, but I remember everything really clear, pretty clear up until that night. And this was, it was actually my Uncle Frank had passed away, and we had his funeral. And so my sister was there, and my mom was there, and then after the funeral, they went to my mom's tax guy, accountant. And then Stuart went back to work, and Heather, my daughter, went to pick up her kids. And I did this when it was like about 2:30, 2:40 in the afternoon, and the horse jumped and kicked me. And I remember everything going black, and then I remember waking up and the horse is running around. So I called Stuart, and I'm like, "Are you close to home?" And he's like, "No, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, no big deal. I think I've been kicked in the head." And because I felt like right here, and I felt a big lump, like a lump. And so I'm holding some snow because I thought maybe that would be good to hold some snow on my head. So then I said, "No big deal, no big deal. I'll call my mom and Lori," because I thought they were there. So I called them, and I'm like, "Are you home? Because I need help catching this horse. I think I've been kicked in the head." And they said, "No, we went over to, the accountants." And I'm like, "Okay, no big deal." So I remember the horse running like we have a pretty big yard, and running all around. And then she went down to this one spot, and I remember chasing her over there, and there's snow everywhere. And I'm like, "You're so rude." And I was so mad at her because that was rude,
Yeah,
I thought that,
kicking the head.
yeah. And I know she didn't do it to be mean. She was just playing because they'd been locked up all day, So I got her put in her pan and caught her and put her in her pan. And then I'm holding the snow on my head all this time because I'm really going to prevent any damage, And all of a sudden I go like this, and I look down, and the snow is full of blood. And I'm like, "Oh." And so then I go like this, and I had slit my head. She had hit my head here. I think she kicked me, and it kind of went here and then down here. And so that was Stuart finally came home, and I think I was in my house washing my hands. At that point, I think I was crying in the closet because it hurt. The cold water, the water hurt my hands so bad. I couldn't believe how bad my hands hurt when my head had been kicked.
Wow.
So isn't that
Yeah.
so there's my biggest thing. And then I took a picture of it and asked my sister Lori, who had worked at the hospital as a helper. And I'm like, "I don't think I need to go to the hospital." And she's like, "I think you probably do." And I mean, we're
You're
barrel
tough.
racers. We don't need to.
Kicked in the head,
Yeah.
brains half of hanging out. It's okay.
Whatever,
I'm entered for next week, so just put a bandage on it.
It's like, where do I? And I had a barrel race in Spanish Fork a few weeks later, and I was going to try to run, but it was bad. And so but I had to continue to go because I do remember thinking, if I don't ride and I don't keep trying to do this, I'm just going to not want to be around the horses at all. Because I was quite scared of everything.
Well, it's
at that point.
traumatizing.
Very
much so.
traumatizing.
Like you said, PTSDs can play a way into that you have to mentally work past
Right.
those injuries.
Yeah.
To your point that it's, Terry, that it's not a matter of if, it's when.
Right.
If you're legging up as many horses as you are and, working with all of those and that it is, it's that awareness of, so when we're talking about disciplining the horse, you have to keep yourself disciplined as much as them so that you can prevent accidents.
Yes. Because, you have to always remember they're a horse. I don't care how nice they are, how quiet, how gentle. You always have to be aware that they can step sideways and step on you or jump and kick and play. And, so you have to just be really careful. So that's probably where I discipline my horses the most, just because I'm afraid of them. Yeah, but but on the horse, I want a horse to respect me and listen to me, but we try not to ever discipline them around the barrel because that's supposed to be a fun, happy place for the horse. So I will stop them at like at certain points, but I try not to do too much jerking on their heads and too much discipline around the barrels. In fact, I try not to ever do that. I might have to take them away and do it over here, and then come back and do my drill.
Well, and you've done several clinics and things, right? I mean, you've been a clinician, and you've been to a lot of clinics as well, right?
Yeah. I think you can always learn from everybody.
Yeah. Who have been some of the clinicians that you learned a lot from, that you still take those little nuggets that you learned from?
Oh, man. Years ago we went, the Sharon Camarillo, we went to one of her clinics, and actually as good as she is, Shirley Ankrum was the lady that helped her, the one that helped her. And there's a lot of things, because I went in Shirley's group a lot, and she's so good. There's a lot of things that she taught me, and that would have been clear, back in 1999 type of thing. And I learned a lot from her. I actually went to a clinic with Fred and Nancy Hunter years ago, and there's things that I remember that Fred said that I loved. I went to different clinics, all the time. There's people you talk to too, like Sue Smith is just so smart, and she's so, yeah, just, does so much with her horses. And then of course my mom and dad, and it's funny because when my dad started to get sick, I started writing down things that he'd come out and help me, and I'd go in and write down like I need to remember this, and I need to remember this. And so now if I struggle, which I do a lot, and there's a lot of horses I wish my dad was here to help me with, but I'll go back and look up those notes and be like, okay, always go back to the basics. Always just, because a lot of things people taught us over the years at clinics are things my dad had said to do, and like a lot of basics and stuff. So.
It's funny how we need to go and pay someone else to tell us what our parents told us all along.
Yeah, and because they really are so smart.
They are, and I remember that with our daughters. It's like, no, let's have someone else tell them the same thing,
right?
And pay them, because they'll mentor. We look at mentorship, and you've been such a mentor to so many barrel racers and all different age groups and all different. So a big thank you to you for doing that. Where do you think the future of our sport, how does it look in your eyes about that?
I think it looks great. I am so excited for barrel racing, and I just think that the horse industry, and it's growing so much, and I think that it's something that you can do no matter what, just like when COVID hit, we all just, even though we couldn't go anywhere and do a lot of things, we all could get with our horses and ride, and better ourselves. And there's so many people that did that, and going, kids nowadays are so tough, and they do that. They go to clinics and they learn, and you learn from this person and that person and a little bit of everybody, and their riders are better, the horses are better bred, and it's just getting better and better all the time.
Did you ever think that you'd see the prices of horses as what they are?
No.
I mean, when you think about when we was, 30 years ago or whatever, the prices, how the sport in itself has grown and flourished, and just it's amazing some of these big payouts what we have. When we started the Million, and you're seeing these kids, 12-year-old kids taking home $48,000, and you're seeing a college student take home $70 some odd thousand, and it's not winning Calgary, or it's not winning, that there's actually an opportunity in this sport now that we have, that you don't have to be the very best. You just have to be consistent and fall in there.
And it's so wonderful.
Yeah, it really is.
I love watching people do that good. Don't you?
I do. I think it's our future of the sport.
Yeah.
Because the parents are putting them in, like yourself. You're looking at your grandchildren to get on a good foundation horse and then it's a constant move up. But you have to be really committed as parents and grandparents to get those kids on those really good horses, and then a consistent program to keep them going. And I smile at where it's going, because it's very interesting how our sport has evolved, and how the pricing, not only what you can win, but what it's worth. The value of barrel racing has raised exponentially the last
and I love that.
decade.
It makes it fun. Well, then it makes it worth going. And because, like you said, anybody has a chance to win the money. And any horse you take, you can enter 2 or 3 horses and just think it doesn't matter. They can do this or this, and might not be your favorite run or something, but you still can win a whole bunch of money doing it. So
what's your next events? What horses are the up and comers for this year?
I don't even have any futurity colts for this year,
Wow.
which is so weird. I know. I kind of feel lost. I was going to go to Arizona just for a little bit and do some riding, and then I was like, I just couldn't motivate myself to go because I didn't have colts. But I did enter, so I'm entered in the Royal Crown, and that will be in February down in Buckeye. And then what we're thinking of doing is going to the Royal Crown that weekend, and then staying, and then on our way home hitting your race in Vegas.
The Mini Million.
Yeah, the Mini Million in Vegas. And so then go to those 2, and then March we'll just do maybe a couple races, and then April we'll start one rodeo, and then hopefully start rodeo in a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I wish you nothing but the best and success.
Thank
It's
you.
been such a pleasure watching you over your whole career, and you have brought such a joy to the sport. I
Thank
just
you.
can't
That's so
thank you
nice of
enough
you to
for,
say.
for coming and being our guest today on Extreme One to Watch. And make sure that you go in and subscribe and hit that bell notification so when we get more Extreme One to Watch podcasts, you'll get your notification. Thanks so much, and we'll see you down the road.